factors what are the factors to make sure that you're maximizing referrals? Cool. And kind of walking through and give you a couple tips. And then I'm going to be testing while we're doing the phone jam. I know I'm going to be grabbing our people to skills check them. Autumn, Julian, I recommend the same, and just checking people and just seeing where they're at so we can give them feedback, because there's always things that are just consistent. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 20 years. And Julian, what you saw earlier is one of the most common things. And it's just like the language, like one, they're not following the script word for word. Second, they're using a weak language, versus strong language. And like that doesn't work. So let's start with the first thing. All right. The first thing, if you do not have done, you need to finish getting done today. And I know for our guys, I'm checking them all, is your slide deck. If you don't have a slide deck, you're hurting yourself. Cool. Because they need to connect with you. They're going to connect with you more deeply. And guys, even for the people, like that are connected to you, like in theory, like, do you need to show them your slide deck? No, they already know you, right? They're already connected to you, but it does show them how much you care about this, right? It does show them that you're actually putting forth effort, that you took time to do this slide deck, shows them like, oh, wow, like they really care about this. Does that make sense to everyone? So psychologically, it shows them that you actually care about this. And so it makes it for them like, okay, you know what, let me go ahead and like, help them with this, or let me go ahead and move forward, because they know like it's not just a 1 week thing or some like thing you're checking out and leaving, but like for them, it feels like you actually are wanting to succeed with this. So psychologically, for the people that you guys know, it is definitely a big deal, to have that. And then for those that you don't know, it's super important because they're able to connect on a different level. And by the way, if you guys can please put cameras on when you guys come to the office, Zoom room is the office, have your cameras on. Please. But anyway, so that's the first thing that I want to make sure is like, do you guys have your slide deck done? Cool. Then the second thing is, are you guys actually sharing your goals in a way that's like inspiring or impressive to your customers? Or are you just talking about pictures on your slideshow? And yesterday, those who attended, we talked about that process, right? Or Thursday of, are you sharing a little bit about who you are and where you've been? That's small. The biggest thing is where you're going and where you're excited to go in your life, personally, professionally, right? And then the next thing is sharing like what you're excited to gain from Cutco that can help you get there quicker or can help make you more marketable, right? Like stand out. So whether it's tools, resources, whatever you need to help you kick some booty, right? Then you're sharing with them current, like your summer goal, then any current contests or competitions, which obviously we have the playoffs coming up right now. And then you have your sponsorship, which has nothing to do with sales. So are you referencing that in the beginning? So when I get to the sponsorship part, I'm like, Miss Susie, do you remember that sponsorship I told you about? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, awesome. At the end, when I say that, I go back, but that's because in the beginning, when I was sharing my goals, I said to them, hey, by the way, Miss Susie, I have this sponsorship. It actually has nothing to do with sales. I'll show you how you can become a sponsor later. And they're like, oh, okay. And I'm like, don't worry, it's a free way to help out. And they're like, okay, cool. So I'm just kind of plugging that in the beginning. And again, to kind of recap this and what this looks like and where, let me go ahead and share my screen really quick. All right, I'm going to just share Julian's. But just once I get to the sponsorship part, I'm like, hey, by the way, this is my sponsorship. This has nothing to do with sales. I'll show you how you become a sponsor later. Cool. And they're like, all right, awesome. And if you have the map, you're like, yeah, my goal is to sell in all 50 states. These are some of the states I've sold in so far. And then we're going to dive in. I'm like, so thank you again, Miss Susie, so much for helping me towards my goals. I'm super excited about this. And they're like, oh yeah, of course, honey. Right. And so now we do the demo. So at the end of the demo, you guys have to understand that your customers are in one of two places. Cool. They either bought or they didn't. All right. Everyone got that? You're like, all right, duh, Cathy. Well, if they didn't buy, typically they're feeling bad they didn't buy, and so they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Christopher. I'm so sorry I couldn't get more, like they like feel bad, like they didn't buy, right? And then there's the one that did buy. But regardless, they're thinking at the end, like, who do I know that will also buy, right? So for the person who didn't buy, they're like, who do I know that will buy? Because like, they don't want to give you anyone that won't buy because, they don't feel like they feel bad they didn't buy. They don't want anyone else to feel bad. Does that make sense psychologically? So like if they didn't buy and they feel bad they didn't buy and they're like apologizing to you, like they don't want to give you anyone else that's going to feel bad. All right. And then the one that did buy, they don't want to waste your time. They just want to give you people they think would be good. All right. So that's what's happening at the end of the demo. So what I learned my first summer, I was taught was you need at the end of the presentation, once you finish figuring out what they want to buy or don't buy. All right. But once you figure that out at the end, your number one job before you go into referrals is you need to make them feel like a rock star for helping you out with doing the presentation. Does everyone get that? And so my manager had taught me this. And actually, when I went to SE1 my first summer, which for you guys is July 1st, like when there was roundtable learning, I was going around and listening to some of the top Cutco sales professionals. And what I do to this day, that thermometer many of you have that you fill in your demo goals and your the people that you saw. All right. Many of you guys have a version of this in your goals. All right. Julian doesn't. This is huge, Julian. You should have this for sure. All right. But having a thermometer like for the summer that's showing them like what you're excited about and what goals. This has been in my presentation since I went to SU1 in 2002. Cool. So I learned this 19 years ago when I went to a conference and I saw a Cutco sales professional have this. And every time at the end of the presentation, she would have the customer fill in their initials in a box. All right. And then she would fill in the thermometer and have people sign it, right? And so this was like in her physical book before virtual demo times, right? But the concept is still the same of tying them into that. And so she's like at the end of the presentation, the way psychologically that she shifted was as soon as you're done. So I'm going to start with the person that didn't buy, okay? And then I'm going to do the person that did buy. So the person that didn't buy at the end, I'm like, so regardless, it's the same at the end. Like, so by the way, how did you enjoy the appointment? All right. And so I'm going to do the one that didn't buy. And they're like, oh, I'm like, oh, did you enjoy the presentation? I'm like, aren't these products awesome? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I can't wait for when you're able to get Cutco. I'm like, you are going to love this stuff. Right. And so I'm making it okay that they didn't buy today. Right. Even though like, obviously our goal is always for them to buy today if they like it. But not everyone's going to buy. All right. 6 out of 10 buy, 4 out of 10 don't. Like we know that's a national statistic. So are we treating the 4 out of 10 good or just the 5 out of 10, right? So, or 6 out of 10. So at the end, my yellow, when you finish, figuring out what they like, or if they don't buy, so okay, they didn't buy. We're going to go with the no sale first. So then at the end, I'm like, oh, by the way, how did you enjoy the presentation? I'm like, did you like the products? I'm like, aren't they awesome? So again, get them hype about that again. I'm like, yeah, I'm so excited for now that you know Cutco, whenever you're ready to buy more, I'm like, you know what you want to get, right? I'm like, awesome. I'm like, well, by the way, I just want to thank you again so much for taking time out for me. I know there's 1,000 other things you could be doing right now. So I just really appreciate it. I know I said it in the beginning, but I can't thank you enough. Like I know how busy moms are. So do you have that presentation I showed you in the beginning that we were talking about, the slideshow? Yeah, can you pull that back up and go ahead and go to slide 8? And they're like, yeah. So like, this is my slideshow, it's slide 8. So whatever it is for you where this is, but I want them looking at this. And I'm like, do you remember how I told you about the sponsorship? Like, well, actually, by the way, if you go to slide 4, I don't know if you remember, I told you my goal is to do 250 appointments this summer. Cool. And I do get paid every time I do it. Like, so that's what I want to tell you about right now is a sponsorship. So you can go ahead and go to slide 8, right? And they're like, okay, cool. All right. And I'm like, so this is where you can help me out a ton. All right. So let me pause. And that's when we're going to talk about that. So I want to rewind because one of the big things that we want to make sure is like, you know, with that you guys are using the approach and using the app, because the app is almost doubling the amount of referrals people are getting nationwide. That's a huge thing, not like 10% growth, 15, 20, like doubling the amount of referrals. And so if you're not using the app, you're really cutting yourself short. Like I wish this app existed back in the day. Holy crap. I would have gotten so many referrals. All right. I averaged 22 referrals per appointment, handwritten. So like, and that took a while, you know? And so if I would have had this app, oh baby, lights out, that would have been super awesome. All right. But at the end, the big thing I want you guys to catch from here, and then I'm going to walk you through all the recommendation stuff, is that they need to feel good, right? So I'm like, oh my God, I'm so excited for you. Now you know for the future, right? Like that's not in your manual, but it's like making them feel good and say thank you again. Like, you know, my goal is to do 250 appointments. I'm going to fill yours in. And so I'd like fill theirs in for them. And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to fill it in right now. So if you're on a Google slide, they see it in real time, like when you're filling it in. So I'm like, so Miss Susie, I'm going to go ahead and fill in one more for you helping me out today. And so let me grab one of these and put this here. All right. So I'm just gonna put this one's bigger, but there you go. All right, I picked the wrong box. I need to pick a little one, but that's okay. All right, so but that's what I would do. I'd say, hey, let me go ahead and fill one more just for you helping me out. And they're like, awesome. I'm like, heck yeah. I'm like, thank you so much for helping me get one more appointment in, right? So again, that whole thing of like thanking them, I'm so excited for you, like filling in the box, like that's not in your manual, but psychologically, it's something I learned to make the customer feel really good about having just taken time out for you, right? And then seeing visually when I filled in that little box, how like they actually did help you get one step closer. Do you guys see that? It's like, it's a physical representation of that. And so now when I go to ask for referrals, like they feel good and they feel like they actually helped you. And so do you think that they're more apt to give you other people, even if they might not buy? Of course they are, because they know they actually helped you and they feel like they actually helped you. Can I get a thumbs up if you're with me? All right. So now you have the customer that didn't buy. All right. So the customer that didn't buy at the end, or sorry, the customer that did buy, like they're excited, whatever they got. But again, I want to take them back to the appointment, because if they're just thinking about the sale they just had, I don't want them just giving me people they think will buy. Of course, I want those people too, and I'm going to brainstorm with them, but I want to make sure that I get anyone and everyone that I can to help me just do an appointment, because what I know is that some buy and some don't. And what I know is that everybody recommends me to people because they love me. So I know if I get in front of more moms, I'm going to get more referrals. And if you don't think that, you need to think that. Cool. Like you need to come with that kind of confidence, because that also in life is going to impact you at a very high level when you come with confidence and know what you want. All right. So we have the person who purchased, right? So at the end, I'm like, I'm so excited for you, Miss Cynthia. Like you are gonna love your Cutco, or maybe they had a Cutco. I'm like, I'm so excited for you to add to your Cutco. I'm like, you're gonna be so much happier now with more Cutco. Like I find that my customers that own the most Cutco like love it the most. Like they're just like, best stuff ever, so super excited for you. I'm like, but I do want to say thank you again so much for just taking time for me. Like I know that there's so many other things you could be doing, and I'm just so appreciative of your time. And actually, just for helping me out, I'm like, if you go to this slideshow, to slide number 4, I'm like, I need to go ahead and fill in one more little box for you helping me. So let me go ahead and put that here. Boom. Do you see it? Oh yeah, that's your box, Miss Cynthia. So one step closer, and I really appreciate it. And that's the most important thing to me, is that I can do 25 appointments a week over the next 10 weeks. If I do that, I know I'm going to hit my goal, and then now I'm going to dive into the referral stuff. But again, what I just showed you guys is not in the manual. It's something I learned when I went to SE1 from some of the top Cutco sales professionals. And they said, look, if you want to get a lot of referrals, they need to have felt good about just doing the appointment. If they're going to give you people that they think will just do the appointment, whether they're going to buy or not, they need to feel good about just doing the appointment, right? So at the end, make sure that you bring them back to like the appointment and how much it really helps you towards it. And so that they can feel really good about that. Okay. So that's really important. Now, once we do that, now we're going to go to, and I'm going to show you guys now how we dive into the recommendation asking, right, of this. So again, the first thing, I can do that for all of you guys. The first thing, okay, that's fine. Give me 1 second, guys. Let's go here. So everyone got that. So we've got the pre-demo, like, are you sharing your goals and showing them the sponsorship? And you're just teasing the sponsorship. You're not explaining it in the beginning. You're just saying, hey, I have the sponsorship. It has nothing to do with sales. I'll show you how you can become a sponsor later. And I always like to point out, oh, look, there's your friend, Julie Cameron. Or look, there's your friend, Precious. I'm like, yeah, I'll show you how you can become a sponsor later too, right? So you're just like dropping that in the beginning. At the end, what are we doing at the end once we figure out what they're buying or if they're not buying? What are we doing? Anybody?
Making them feel like a rock star.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You literally just took the words out of my mouth. Thank you, Precious, for listening to me talk so much. I was literally going to say, you need to make them feel like a rock star. All right. Just for helping you out. So they need to feel like a rock star just for helping you out. Not because they bought, right? Like you get excited for them for buying, or you get excited that they're going to now know Cutco. And when they're ready, they're going to get to own Cutco in the future. But you make them go back to that, just taking time to do the appointment. Miss Susie, thank you so much. Like I appreciate your time so much. And they're like, of course, honey. And so now I'm going to transition to asking for the referrals, right? So now I'm like, all right, so Miss Susie, go ahead and pull out your cell phone real quick so you can answer that third question about my product knowledge for me. And by the way, there is no need to make me sound better than I really am. I just want to get real feedback so I can keep improving. Okay. And let me know when you're done so I can actually explain the sponsorship to you and how that works. Okay. And so now we're going to do that. They do that. And then they're like, all right, cool. I did it. I'm like, perfect. I'm like, so do you remember the $150 sponsorship I was telling you about earlier? Or that I showed you earlier? I'm like, you can go to the slideshow. It's on slide, let me see here, slide 8. Go ahead and go to slide 8. And so they're like, okay. So they go to slide 8, which is this one of mine. All right. So whatever slide it is for you. And so now they're looking at this right here. Cool. And I'm like, awesome. And guys, you're literally just following here. And you're like, so there's one more super important part. I'm like, here's where you can really help me out. I get paid every time I show Cutco, and I can only show people I've been personally recommended to. All right. So guys, that right there is the job. Everyone understand that? Like, you need to make sure you hit the job. Some of you guys are like, I've heard people doing their recs and people, this is a part where I see people like, and by the way, I get it. And I've seen it for like almost 20 years, but people are like, yeah, I like, I kind of do that. Like, you can't kind of do this. When you're doing your referrals, you have to 100% do your referrals. Okay. Now we can add the psychology, like I just talked about, right? Like what I just did for y'all. Let me pull this up. Is not in the actual approach. The how'd you like my demo? The making them feel like a rock star, right? This is not in here. Feel like a rock star. And then I like to fill their thermometer. All right, so that they see visual of helping me with appointment. Everyone get that? All right. So I like to do that so they see that visual of them helping me with the appointment. So I'm doing that first, like you guys saw me do. So again, that part is like, oh, so how'd you like it? And they're like, oh my gosh, it was awesome. I'm like, isn't Cutco amazing? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, I'm so excited you're gonna. Oh, I'm like, now you know, in the future when you're ready, like that's a person who didn't buy, And I'm like, now you know. I'm like, but thank you again so much, Miss Susie, just for doing the appointment. All right, and they need to feel it. So you're like, oh, thank you so much, and you're like telling me, I'm saying that. Well, are you saying that? Words are 10%. You might be saying those words, but your delivery sucks. All right. When you tell someone like, oh, thank you so much for doing the appointment, I really appreciate it. Like, great, you're saying that. But if I'm like, Miss Susie, thank you so much for just taking time out for me. I'm like, it helps me so much just to do the appointment. And I just want to say, just appreciate your time again, because I know moms are so busy. And so I just want to thank you. Like, doesn't that feel like for real? Right? Versus like, oh, thank you so much for doing it. They're like, of course, yeah, sure. But it's like when you say it, like really say it, they're like, oh my God, yeah, of course. And like for a mom, it feels damn good to feel appreciated. Okay. Because moms, I feel unappreciated all the time. All right. Do you guys agree with that? Like, have you guys ever heard a mom like, no one appreciates that I do? Like, said every mom ever. Okay. So
Right.
like when you guys really take time to appreciate them, it feels really good. All right. So again, recap. We shared our goals in the beginning. At the end of sharing goals, we got to the sponsorship and we said, oh, Miss Susie, this is my sponsorship. Actually, so I shared my sales goals and I told them like, yeah, if you want to write me a check for 10 grand, I'll definitely hit my goal. And they're like, oh yeah, right. I'm like, I'm just kidding. But keep a lookout, because if there's any birthday gifts, weddings, anniversaries, graduation, Father's Day, or anything coming up in the next 6 to 12 months, not only are you getting an unbelievable product, but it helps me out a ton for my goals. Cool. And Miss Susie, this stuff is way too expensive for you to buy just to be nice. I'm like, I'm assuming you didn't put away a couple grand waiting for the knife girl. But I do want to show you why so many people invest in Cutco. Like Miss Julie, she's had them 28 years. And my grandma's had them for like 12. And they're like, oh, wow. I'm like, yeah, so I'll show you that. I'm like, but I could actually win a $150 award. That helps to pay for books and stuff, or like continuing education, or stuff for my kids, or whatever it is for you, right? But I can earn $150, worth of stuff that really helps towards XYZ. I'm like, so I'll tell you about that later. I'm like, but again, it has nothing to do with sales, right? I do my demo, the demo finishes, I make them feel like a freaking rock star at the end, all right? No matter what. So they didn't buy. Thanks for taking time. I'm so excited for you. Now you know Cutco. Now you know what to get in the future when you're ready to replace, right? They purchase. Miss Susie, I'm so excited for you. Like, you're going to love your Cutco. Like, I'm like, you're going to be so excited. I promise. I'm like, you might have to have me over for dinner. I can show you, make sure you're using the knives properly. Or they add it to their collection. I'm like, I'm so stoked for you to have, add it to your collection. I'm like, you're going to love it. Like the more Cutco people have, like seriously, like the more they're obsessed with it. So I'm so excited for you. I'm like, the biggest thing, and we bring it back to the demo, right? The biggest thing I want to say is thank you so much for just taking time out for me. I'm like, I know there's a million other things you could be doing right now. And I just want to thank you so much for taking time out to help me with this appointment. Cool. And actually I need to fill in I need to fill one of my boxes here. If you want to go to slide 4, you can see it in action, right? And so now I'm like just going. So again, this is just right in the beginning that I do this. But I'm like, yeah, go ahead and go to slide 4 real quick. I'm like, let me go ahead and fill in one more of these boxes, right? And so I'm going to, let's take a little green one because those are my only little ones apparently. So let me go ahead and fill one more over here. Boom, one step closer. All right. So Miss Susie, thank you again so much for that. And actually, do you remember that sponsorship I told you about? I'm like, well, actually, can we go to your app real quick? So like, here's where, again, like I did it for 19 years without an app. So like now I have to get that app in there. It is beautiful and amazing. And I'm just like so excited about this. So right there, so I'm like, okay, so rewind. I made them feel great. I filled in their demo, and I'm like, all right, awesome. Now, Miss Susie, go ahead and plot yourself one real quick. Cool. So you could answer that third question about my product knowledge for me. There's no need to make me sound better than I really am. I just want to get real feedback so I can keep improving. Cool. And just let me know when you're done so I can explain the sponsorship and how it works. And they're like, okay. Now they go. All right. And again, if you're more quiet or laid back, my mentors, Ryan Casey, and my first summer, Peter Sheets, who taught me how to sell Cutco really well, they're like the most quiet, like introverted people. Okay. Like literally opposite personality of mine. But when I watched them do this, they were like, so Miss Susie, go ahead, and this would be the tone they speak in. They're like, oh, go ahead and pull out your cell phone, so you can answer the third question about my product knowledge for me. And there's no need to make me sound better than I am. Okay, I just want to get real feedback, Miss Jones, so I can keep improving. Okay, so just let me know when you're done, and I'll explain my sponsorship. And they're like, okay, honey, so like you don't need to be like super loud and fast like me. They were completely opposite and had succeeded at much higher levels than I had, and taught me the concepts, right? Because you're always going to put your personality into it, but the concepts are the same. Okay. And so once they're like, okay, honey, yeah, I finished. And you're like, all right, awesome. So do you remember the $150 sponsorship I was telling you about earlier? I'm like, slide 8, Miss Susie, go to slide 8. And they're like, okay. But guys, I will tell you this. I don't care if you're quiet, shy, introvert, whatever, like you have to have more energy on this part. This needs to be the most exciting part of your presentation. Okay. And they need to feel that you're excited to ask for Rex. I will tell you right now, one of the number one reasons, there's like, I have like my top 3 reasons why people don't ask for Rex. 1, they don't follow the freaking approach. 2, they use wussy words. 3, they're not excited or energetic, and people feel like they're like scared to ask. Like their energy sucks when they're asking. All right. So again, you're either not following the approach, your energy sucks, or you're using crappy words. Like those are the 3 main reasons that you guys don't get Rex. Okay. So you've got to be excited. Like I remember Angie, she's like, I'm doing everything you told me and I'm not getting Rex. And I'm like, that's bullshit. Because if you're doing what I told you, you'd get a lot of Rex. I was like, I know that. I said, ask me for Rex. She asked me for Rex, and I was like, dude, you sound like a wuss. I go, your energy completely changed. I go, it's not the same person that I know and the same person that just did this demo and was all excited. And then Rex came, you're like, oh, so there's like one more important part. Here's where you could really help me. And like her demeanor completely changed. It was literally like a different person. I said, how do you think I feel when I'm like, yo, I just was with this person for the demo, and now this person's asking me for X, and I'm really confused as to why this like personality shift just happened, right? Like you need to be consistent throughout. And again, if anything, when we get to the Rex, the energy should go up, not down. Everyone get that? Okay. So this is really freaking important when you're with your customer. So again, when we get here, I'm like, oh, Miss Susie, go ahead and go to slide 8 so I can explain that sponsorship to you. All right. So that's like here. When I say have them look at the slide, all right, I want them looking at the sponsorship slide. Cool. So I'm like, all right, awesome. I'm like, so there's one more important part. Here's where you can really help me out. All right. So I get paid every time I show Kako, and I can only call people I've been personally recommended to. All right. So guys, this right here is the job. Everyone got that? That's the job. You need to make sure you always, always nail that. So I'm going to go ahead and put that light green. This is money. So that's the job. So I get paid every time I show Kako, and I can only show it to people I've been personally recommended to. I'm like, so Miss Susie, I'm really working hard to keep my schedule full in order to hit my goals. So what I need you to do, and so the next thing is the joke. All right. And so this is the joke right here. So have some fun, but you're like, oh, so Miss Susie. So again, like you want to be assertive. So what I was saying was like language. Some people are like, so it would be great. So I wanted to see if you could maybe give me some nice people to see to help me hit my goals. Or so I wanted, or they'll say, oh, so I wanted to see if maybe you'd be okay. Or I was wondering if you could maybe introduce me to some nice people that could maybe help me. Like get rid of the maybes and the would you, could you, maybe, sort of, get rid of that shit. All right. Like the approach is literally made to be a joke to make them laugh, but it's also telling them what you want. So I'm like, oh, Miss Susie. So what I need you to do is go through your contacts and write down the first 200 to 300 names. And I always say 200 to 300. And if you guys look at your My Vector impact on the recos, like where it gives you like things, tips to get more racks. All right. On here, where'd we go? Where are my rec tips? Here we go. So tips to get more racks. All right. When you guys are doing thought joggers, and then here, family, friends, coworkers, neighbors, who do you know that has lots of kids, all that. But then having fun, right? Making them laugh. This is what I learned. And so my manager told me to say 200 to 300 and 20 to 30 is perfect. That's what he taught me to say. And guys, I averaged 22 referrals per appointment. It's a very doable thing. All right. So again, right here. So I'm like, oh yeah. So what I need you to do is go through your contacts and jot down the first, I'm just going to put in what I used to do. So 200 to 300 names that come to mind. I'm like, just kidding. 20 to 30 is fine. All right. So that's like, again, this is in your manual and it gives you like the extras. I'm just going to put it in the approach so you have it. So I'm like, yeah, so what I need you to do is go through your contacts, jot down the first 200 to 300 names that come to mind. I'm like, just kidding. I'm like 20 to 30 is fine. And actually the app you downloaded is designed to be a huge time saver for the both of us on this part. I'm like, it actually allows you to send me introductions straight to the app. So anyone you recommend automatically syncs with the phone. So like, you don't have to take time to like type them all out, and email them to me or like take time to give them over the phone. I'm like, so it's much easier. And of course, I'll only be able to see the contacts that you give me. And they're like, okay, awesome. I'm like, so on the bottom of the screen, you'll click the share button and then hit OK to share contacts. All right. And then you can select those 100 people you want to refer to me. All right. And you're like, just kidding. But on this part, I want you to go ahead and check off everyone you think might be nice enough to see me, not necessarily. And so this is the reminder. You have to always give them the reminder. All right. So everyone you think would see me. So I'm going to highlight that part there. So Miss Jones, everyone you think might be nice enough to see me, not necessarily people you think would buy, just people who are nice like you. All right. And it's okay if they're out of the state since I, do everything online anyway. All right. So those three things, the job, all right, the joke, and then the reminder after you explain the app, reminding them that, again, we're not looking for people that'll just buy, but anyone you think might be nice, not necessarily people that will buy, just people nice like you. And they're like, okay, cool. All right. And then we explain the sponsorship. So, and I'm going to do it all together because like, I know it sounds long because I keep pausing, but it goes really smooth. So here I'm like, all right, so here's how the sponsorship works. Every 50 sponsors, the company gives me $150 worth of Cutco that I can use to pay for books and stuff. All right. And every 10 names someone gives me a sponsor. So if you submit 100 names, you'd be a 10-time sponsor. 50 names, you'd be a 5-time sponsor. 20 names, you'd be a 2-time sponsor. And even if you only get to 10, you still become a sponsor. And again, when I get all 50 sponsors, I get the $150 award. All right. And they're like, oh, okay. I'm like, yeah. So check out as many nice moms as you can. Let me know when you're finished before you click the share button at the bottom, because I have a way you can get some free Cutco. Cool. And just take as much time as needed during this part. And they're like, all right, awesome. And so they go do that. All right. You okay, bud? I'm going to put you down. All right. All right. So let me show you guys. So again, let me do it one last time for y'all at the end when I go to do the referral so you can see it. And then we're going to role play and we're going to hop on the phones. I'm going to start grabbing you guys to take a look at all this. All right. Because it really does make a difference. So again, I finish the presentation. I make them feel like a rock star. I go back, I fill out their demo, like, oh, let's put you, I'm one step closer. I'm like, thank you so much. And they're like, yeah, of course. I'm like, so actually, Miss Susie, go ahead and pull out your phone so you can just answer that third question about my product knowledge for me. And there's no need to make me sound better than I do. I really want to get feedback so I can keep improving. Okay. And so just let me know when you're done and I'll explain my sponsorship. So you can start, fill out your qualified presentation sheet. If you're putting in an order, you can start putting in your order. And then when they say, okay, I'm ready, pause your order and you say, okay, cool. So do you remember the $150 sponsorship I was telling you about? I'm like, if you go to slide 8, you can look at it. I'm like, yeah, that right there. I'm like, awesome. So this right here is where you can really help me out. I'm like, so I get paid every time I show Cutco, and I can only show it to people I've been personally recommended to. So I'm really working hard to keep my schedule full so I could be one of the top competitors for the playoffs, or so I could win a scholarship or whatever you're excited about. So what I need you to do, Miss Susie, is just scroll through your contacts on your phone and just put down the first 200 to 300 names that come to mind. All right. And I'm just kidding. I'm like 20 to 30 is fine. And actually the app that you downloaded is designed to be a huge time saver for this part. I'm like, it actually allows you to send introductions to me right to the app so that when you recommend them, it automatically syncs with my phone. So you don't need to take the time to like type them all out and email them to me. So it's much easier. And of course, I'll only be able to see the contacts that you send me. Cool. So if you look on the bottom of the screen, go ahead and scroll down, Miss Susie. You'll click the share button. Cool. And then go ahead and click OK to share contacts. Let me know when you're there. All right, awesome. So now it'll let you select the 100 people you want to send to me. All right. And so on this part, I'd like you to go ahead and check off everyone you think might be nice enough to see me. Not necessarily people you think would buy Miss Susie, just people nice like you. All right. And it's okay if they live out of the state, by the way, because I do everything online anyway. And so here's how the sponsorship works. Every 50 sponsors I get $150 worth of Cutco that helps me pay for books and stuff. Okay. And so every 10 names someone gives. So if you give 100, you would be a 10-time sponsor. If you get 50, you'd be a 5-time, 20, 2-time. But even if you only got to 10, you're still a sponsor. And when I get all 50 sponsors, I get the $150 award. Cool. So go ahead and check off as many names as you can. Let me know when you're finished before you click the share button, because I actually have a way you can get some free Cutco. Okay. I'm going to go ahead, take as much time. I have to put my stuff online and fill out my paperwork. So it'll take me a couple minutes anyway. Let me know when you get there. Okay. And then I work on my stuff. All right, guys, this is the most important thing. And if it takes you 5 minutes, it only took 3 minutes, but whether it takes you 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes to explain, it's the 5 most important minutes of your presentation outside of sharing your goals. Cool. 5 most important. So share your goals like a rock star, ask for recs properly, and then let them work on it. And so now if my customer is like, okay, honey, I'm about to, I'm like, oh, what does it say? They're like, oh, it says 14. I'm like, oh, Miss Susie, you're only 6 away from becoming a double sponsor. I'm like, if you can get to 6, I can actually give you a free piece of Cutco with your order as a thank you. And they're like, really? I'm like, yeah, who else do you know? So who do you know that won't buy, but they're super nice like you, right? I'm like, who do you know that, loves to cook? Who do you know that entertains all the time? Who do you know that loves to throw parties? I'm like, who do you know that works and eats? And they're like, they always laugh. I'm like, put them all down too. And they're like, everyone? I'm like, great. I'm like, Miss Susie, I'm like, as long as they're a nice mom, I'd love to see them. And so we just brainstorm there. All right. So I'm gonna pause. I can keep going because there's a lot of other things that we can keep adding, and like how to get the recs you want and how to get into the neighborhoods you want and all that. And on Monday at the division meeting, you're gonna learn how to like network and really ask for what you want and some different tips on that. Cool. But I want to hear biggest takeaways from this.